Director Noah Baumbach and co-writer and star Greta Gerwig provide a sharp, fleet, and very funny look at female friendship and adulthood responsibility acceptance in Frances Ha. Gerwig gives what may be her best performance yet. Terrence Malick pushes his narrative techniques even further into the wonder, as the childhood remembrances in The Tree of Life are to an idea of heaven. The tumultuous romance between Ben Affleck and Olga Kurylenko represent hell as distance from and separation from God. The Swedish docudrama Eat, Sleep, Die is a pretty stunning Dardenne Brothers-esque look at the struggle of immigrant workers and one young woman in particular. This feature debut by director Gabriella Pickler was my best discovery of the festival. I don't know that I picked up all of the subtext about Portuguese colonialism in Miguel Gomez's Tabu, but the gorgeous imagery and sound design provide plenty to groove on. Like Someone in Love finds Abbas Kiarostami doing a variation on his previous film, Certified Copy, this time setting his film in Japan, he delves into the idea that people are who we want them to be and not as comprehensible as what's under the hood of a car or translated text. Joe Wright's Anna Karenina is a sumptuous adaptation of the Russian classic starring Keira Knightley. Tom Stoppard's screenplay moves like a locomotive through the inventively staged surroundings. Sarah Polley studies family lore, surprises, and shared history in the documentary Stories We Tell. The least known about it, the better, in a highly personal work told with grace and empathy. Within the House, Francois Ozon turns out a wickedly funny thriller about a literature teacher who's fascinated by a student's voyeuristic reports on another family's activities. Olivier Assayas revisits his youth and France after May 1968 in Something in the Air. His recreation of the time's rebellion and idealism can get repetitive across visits to various scenes, but still paints a hypnotic vision of the period. The creepy Berberian sound studio follows Toby Jones as a sound engineer gradually losing his mind working on an Italian horror film. Brian De Palma lets it rip in Passion, a florid thriller starring Rachel McAdams and Noomi Rapace as competitive business colleagues. The film is often on the verge of going into full-blown camp, yet the director keeps it in control. Neil Jordan's stylish Byzantium filters ideas about female relationships and power via a vampire movie starring Saoirse Ronan and Gemma Arterton. The epic Kon-Tiki is Norway's version of a big-budget Hollywood prestige pick. The story of Thor Heyerdahl and crew's expedition on a raft across the Pacific Ocean could have had richer characters, but remains a rousing entertainment. Venturing into mixed territory, Thanks for Sharing is a polished dramedy about sex addiction destined for the daytime talk show seals of approval. Mark Ruffalo, Gwyneth Paltrow, and Tim Robbins give good performances, but the film falters somewhat in the third act. Matthias Schoenaerts and Marion Cotillard do solid work in Rust and Bone, but the motivations for their characters often make no sense in this muddle of a story about a fighter and a killer whale trainer brought together after she's involved in a serious accident. In The Gatekeepers, former Israeli intelligence heads make some good points about the conflict with Palestine, but their shared wisdom seems awfully self-serving in the end. The Land of Hope contains potential for a tough and sometimes absurdist look at post-earthquake Japan that can be too deliberate and repetitive in making a statement. Experimental Canadian director Peter Metler produces some impressive images in The End of Time, but it's not nearly enough in a documentary that is way too meandering and never really on point regarding how we experience time. Josh Boone's Writers, with Greg Kinnear, Jennifer Connelly, Lily Collins, and Kristen Bell, is plenty watchable, but nothing notable. Imagine a CW drama based on a song by The National, and you'll have a pretty good idea about what this is like. Michael Shannon stars as a real-life contract killer in The Iceman, but the duality of his solid family man character is never on view. The film suffers from its unvaried, psychologically thin portrait of a brutal man. Holly Hunter pops up as a long-lost mother in the boilerplate Dutch family road comedy Jackie, starring sisters Carice and Jelke van Houten, but this glance at finding home in a virtual stranger is built on a shaky foundation. The documentary The Lebanese Rocket Society plays more like a self-congratulatory lap for the co-directors who discovered this piece of trivia and returned attention to the program. Rob Zombie's films haven't been my thing, and The Lords of Salem did nothing to change my opinion. Zombie has a solid visual sense, but his enervating new film doesn't make his memorable compositions worth the trouble. Festival fatigue caught up with me some during the Chinese historical epic The Last Supper, but what I did see between the times I nodded off wasn't particularly thrilling. By far the worst film I saw at TIFF was No One Lives. Playing as part of the Midnight Madness program, the WWE production isn't very good at shocks or gore, and flat out awful at storytelling.